Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey there. Ritual here to give a big shout out to you for making it through the hectic holiday season. The magic of those family moments, that was you. And now there's new milestones to prep for in 2025. This new year, check clean, quality pregnancy nutrient support off your to-do list with Ritual. We've done the research to create science-backed pregnancy support like our prenatal multivitamin, natal choline, and fertility support, all designed to be taken alongside each other. But don't just take our word for it. They're also third-party tested for microbes and heavy metals and Clean Label Project certified. So whether you're trying, thinking about trying, or already there, we don't have to tell you that prioritizing yourself can be the hardest part. That's why we're helping you get started today with 30% off a 3-month supply for a limited time at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
After a while, the spectacle of Wolf Blitzer claiming that something you've already heard 19 times is breaking news makes the white-hot flames incinerating your body seem like a spa treatment. So it should come as no surprise that I caught your Inauguration Day speech in all its fascistic glory. And let me say this, that was, I don't know if I can say this.
Say it.
Say it.
That was some fucked up shit.
Whoa! There you go, Jill. There you go.
Say it?
Rip off
I'm
that
sorry.
Ooh, yes, exactly.
And I
Love
just
it. Welcome to the latest episode of Trailblaze. It's the show where we talk about the America we're becoming and the America we want to be. I'm your co-host, Nayyera Huck.
Hi, I'm Jamal Simmons. It's good to talk to everyone today. How are you, Nayyera?
I'm listen, it's been a lot, but I'm actually doing pretty good because I enjoy the company that we are keeping. And I also have been truly wrestling with some of these constitutional questions, not because I walk around doing that all day, but because I literally have to teach them to a bunch of undergrads every Friday, all day. In that spirit, we went to the Supreme Court on Friday, and all of these cases that have been coming down, and I, in checking in with you, Jamal, what we want to talk about today, it was obvious we need to talk about the role of the courts and whether or not that will hold. And who else better to have than Jill Wine-Banks, our fellow host over on the Sisters-in-Law podcast. Thank you for joining us, Jill.
Thank you, Nayyera.
Hey, Jill.
And hi, Jamal. So nice to see you both. I'm very happy to be here. And I want to hear about your visit to the Supreme Court.
It felt like a tomb.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. The big marble hallways, but it's much smaller. Everything in DC is much smaller than you think it would be, including the West Wing and the Supreme Court. And there are people from all over the country really excited about learning and, bringing us back to the founding principles of our government. But I was most struck by, and Jill, you'll probably appreciate this, that the Supreme Court Museum has a case right there as you enter, emblazoned on it. And it's Cooper v. Aaron, which I don't think most people are familiar with that one. People think Brown versus Board of Education and the different desegregation. But Cooper v. Aaron was the one where the federal court said, Arkansas, you have to do this thing that we have said it needs to be done. You don't get to ignore the courts just because you feel like it.
What a good case that is. But I'm struck when you say it's smaller than you think, because when I argued in the Supreme Court, it seemed to me that the bench was about 40 feet tall and that I had to stand just looking up and up and up, and that it was so scary. So totally different than I expected.
Well, that's amazing. I can't imagine that. I imagine that just even standing there, having to, look up at these justices, knowing the history and, arguing the case, whatever the stakes, that alone is just pretty impressive.
It was intimidating, and you just have to learn how to sort of compartmentalize and say, there's no one else here. And when you stand up to say, may it please the court, it just seems so unreal. It really is. it's scary and it's energizing at the same time.
I mean,
That sounds great.
remind folks, you were there at a very tumultuous time in American democracy, too.
Well, I've actually been in the Supreme Court twice. Once I did not argue. I was just part of the team that had the Watergate team. The second time I was Solicitor General of Illinois and was arguing. And when I was Solicitor General, we were in such a peaceful period of time. When I was there during Watergate, obviously the crowds outside the court were huge. And it was the public pressure that changed the outcome, not of the court decision. The court decision was the right decision. And that wasn't changed by public pressure. It was just the law and the facts.
Which decision was that?
That was U.S. v. Nixon.
Give us a little history.
Yeah. Okay. That was U.S. v. Nixon, which basically said, yeah, you're not above the law, sir. You have to turn over those tapes. And Richard Nixon, for all the crime he may have committed, not may, but all the crimes he did commit, believed in the rule of law. And so when he was told by a unanimous Supreme Court, and it was actually an 8-0 decision because Justice Rehnquist had been involved when he had worked for the Nixon administration. And so he had recused himself, as was proper, and which is not being done now. So back then there was a rule of law and ethics at the Supreme Court, but it was a unanimous decision and he obeyed it. And the fact that we are now debating or hearing challenges from the White House and from the vice president and from members of Congress that it's optional. And so I'm so glad, Nayyera, that you mentioned this Cooper case that says, no, it's not optional. Obeyance of the law. And it's sad to me that we're discussing this, that it's not obvious to everyone that our system is built on 3 branches of government with co-equal powers and oversight on each other and their own independent powers, but the courts are the arbiter of what's legal and constitutional and what isn't. And that's why I was so proud of the American Bar Association for its last 2 statements in just the last 2 days. One saying, yes, the rule of law is the rule of law and that it must be obeyed and that we are in, they didn't use the word coup, but that's basically what they were suggesting, is that we're in the middle of a coup. And I have a hashtag on X, which I'm trying to get off because I don't want to be on it, but I have so many followers who really engage with me there that I hate to leave them. I'm hoping, if you're listening, that you'll follow me on Blue Sky so I can leave X and you will engage with me on Blue Sky. But they have also recently, in addition to that, they have condemned remarks about questioning the legitimacy of our courts and that it's optional to obey. So it's very terrifying. But what I was starting to say was I have this hashtag called "Say This, Not That." And I think one of the things I would say is, let's call it a coup, because that's what it is. Yes, there's no military involved, but the result is the same. They are ignoring the laws, the Impoundment Act. They're ignoring the Constitution, which gives the power of the purse to Congress. They're taking down the names of agencies and firing people who are protected by civil service protections or who Congress has given a term of 5 years or 10 years, depending on which agency. And they're firing them as if that didn't matter. And it does. And the scene, I'm sure you saw the pictures from the Oval Office with Elon Musk with his, 4-year-old, who was dressed better than he was.
Princeling?
The Princeling. Yes. Isn't his name X? His name is X.
Yes, he is.
And he's sitting on his father's shoulders. They're always on brand. His father is wearing a baseball cap and T-shirt, and he's wearing a suit and tie. The baby is wearing a suit and tie, and Elon Musk does not show the respect to the president and the presidency and the Oval Office that he should be shown. Anyway, it was an obscene scene where it was obvious that Trump is extraneous, that he wasn't the one in charge, that Elon Musk is. And that isn't what we need in America. That is what we are in danger of.
It was also such a Trumpy moment, right? Because obviously there are all these big momentous questions on the table. They're going into documents or into databases. They are going into our private data. They are shutting down agencies that they don't have the right to, laying off employees they don't have the right to. They're doing all these things. But then Trump allows this very small thing to happen, which is to put the 4-year-old X in the pictures. And so now everybody's just watching this to see what this kid is going to do, right? Like, how is the kid going to react? And so while you're watching this 4-year-old, you're hearing these lies being told by the deputy president or co-president, or maybe Trump's the co-president. It's hard to know who's who in this opera that we're watching. But it's a very Trumpy moment. And that's the thing I think that's the challenge for those of us who are watching it is to help people filter out all the kind of noise that we're getting and all the interference and focus in on what's really important about what's happening.
It was also pointed out on MSNBC this morning that at one point, X went over to the president and the president was like, "Oh, get out of here, go away." I mean, it was really an incredible scene and talks to what you're talking about, Jamal. I mean, it just was really inappropriate.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Big shout out to you for making it through the hectic holiday season. This new year, get clean, quality, pregnancy nutrient support off your to-do list, including Ritual's best-selling Essential Prenatal Multivitamin, designed with 12 traceable key ingredients to support a healthy pregnancy. With big changes coming up, take the small steps now and start today with 30% off a 3-month supply at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
And look, I'll just say this as somebody who has been 6 and I was communications director for the vice president and all that. And you really do know how to set these scenes. These are things that you just would never think of in the Oval Office, the center of where FDR sat and where all these momentous decisions were made, and Ronald Reagan and Bill, all these people. And you would basically kind of defile the place a little bit with your T-shirt. And
that was the worst. I think
that's part of the thing. That's part of right. That's the whole. What they're saying is that all of this tradition has been bunk. All of these norms are terrible. Let the tech people come in, shake things up, and be disruptive. I'm watching at this point then Donald Trump realizing that, oh, this is not his son hanging out here, and he's not the one standing and getting all the questions. So I'm curious to see where the dynamic of the egos goes, because we do know how much of Trump is driven by ego. And who wasn't there? J.D. Vance. The actual elected vice president, right? Who the other day, let me find this quote, says, if a judge tried to tell a general how to conduct a military operation, that would be illegal. If a judge tried to command the attorney general in how to use her discretion as a prosecutor, that's also illegal. At what point did any of this judicial check on the executive become illegal? Jill, did I miss that moment?
The only hope you have from that statement was he said the legitimate power of the president can't be stopped by the courts. Well, this is not the legitimate power of the president. First of all, most of what we're complaining about are his issuing executive orders allowing a non-elected official who's not even a regular government employee. He is a special government employee, which limits, number one, the days he can work. Number two, prevents him or keeps him from having to publicly release financial information and conflicts of interest, empowering him to decide when he has a conflict as opposed to some independent person. And I'm very happy that there are now people who have been fired who are standing up and saying, either I won't leave, I'm sitting in this office, and one of them got actually physically removed, but others haven't. And then others are suing. 8, I think, of the inspectors general who were fired have filed suits saying, my firing wasn't legal. And civil service employees are clearly illegally fired. The process required was not followed. They have certain rights under civil service laws, and no one, the president, Elon Musk, cannot just say, I don't like that law, so I'm ignoring it. They have control. This is the worst part, is that Donald Trump has the White House, he has the Senate, he has the House, and he has the courts, and can selectively bring cases, but he could pass laws very quickly doing what he wants to do. But he's testing the limits of our Constitution, of our foundational principles, by doing it by just saying, I don't like that agency, gone. I don't like USAID, removing the letters from the building, firing everyone, leaving people stranded overseas who have dedicated their lives to helping other people, and people in America not understanding that USAID helps us in America. It's not just that they're helping people overseas, but it gives us credibility overseas. It prevents disease from spreading to America by stopping it at its source. It is something that I don't know why people don't understand the benefits. And I think it's important that we do that. I'm interviewing for Just the Facts, Richard Haas in 2 weeks. And he's was the president of the Council on Foreign Relations and is a longstanding diplomatic staple. And I was going to talk to him more about the obligations of citizens to handle democracy and to keep democracy. But I think with everything that's happening and given his background, I do want to ask him about all of this in terms of how foreign policy impacts our national security at home.
Well, that's one of the tests that I think we're facing. You laid it out very well. The limits of the Constitution, the limits of the law, but also he's testing the limits of the American people and what they're willing to tolerate, right? And how many people show up where and how loud are they going to be? Because they've got to get this frog boiled, right? They've got to they are moving very steadily up the temperature chart to get us to the place that's going to be in trouble. Now, I'm wondering, because I have a friend whose brother was an AID worker in a developing country. I won't name him because he's still employed technically by AID. But they were telling me that he could not actually fire the people who worked for him because of the local laws. So he had to sort of furlough them in this weird way. But more importantly, they had to almost smuggle him out of the country quickly because the way that Trump had been going after them and saying that they were corrupt and also cutting off funding so quickly, they owed all these people money, right? They were like, people had contracts that weren't being fulfilled. So the director of this program had to get out of the country immediately before they were afraid he was going to be detained in that country. So all over the world, we've got these Americans who are personally in jeopardy because the president of the United States is attacking American patriots.
Right. Their president is calling them a criminal. So what are local people supposed to think?
Wow, that is dramatic. That is amazing. How much, despite the years of the progress of Project 2025, which is the source of all of this evil, and all of the detailed planning they didn't think of the consequences. When they said cut off all federal funding, and then they had to go, whoops, we didn't realize it meant that. We're withdrawing that executive order. I can't believe they failed to see the danger that they were putting on people. It is amazing. And I hope they're held accountable.
Well, I'm with you on the accountability. And Elon Musk did in his presidential press conference, because it was in the Oval Office, say that he's all for transparency. I don't think they care about what's happening to people. They've made it very clear that there will be pain. Direct quotes, there will be pain as we right this ship, right? As they pull down this bureaucracy. He had the nerve to say that democracy, that this is actually the sum total of what democracy should be doing, and that it should be about only the elected people and not any of these unelected experts, which is something that we hear in the right-wing manosphere and right-wing online space, that this idea that expertise and bureaucrats are the ones running our lives. And I would say to this that they're actually the ones keeping you safe. every day, whether it's from your food, from your medicine, from foreign attacks. They keep you safe and allow you to just go about your day and do whatever you feel like. Where do the courts then come into this? Because if these people don't care about people's lives overseas, people hurting economically or domestically, do they really care what a bunch of judges are going to say?
Well, they may not, and it is going to be up to the people. And let me go back to Watergate, when it was public pressure that forced compliance, in part. It was that Richard Nixon realized that he was in trouble politically because the reaction of the public to his saying, I am firing the special prosecutor. And by the way, of course, I had to let my attorney general go, and I had to let my deputy attorney general go because they wouldn't fire him because there was no legal basis to do so, and they wouldn't violate the law and follow my illegal order. He didn't say all those words. I'm saying those words. But the reaction was from the public, this is horrible. And he knew he couldn't survive. So 3 days after that, after what was then the Saturday Night Massacre, as opposed to the Friday Night Massacre, firing all the inspectors general, he reversed himself and said, okay, I'll give you the tapes and I'll hire a new special prosecutor. And I am so pleased. Just today, 8 of the inspectors general who were fired, and I don't know why it wasn't all of them, they should all be part of this, brought a lawsuit in which they basically said the truth. They said, we are what is reducing inefficiencies. We are reducing fraud and waste. And we saved, and I don't remember the exact amount, there was a billion after whatever the number was. We saved X billion in costs for the government. That's how much we saved by our existence. And we have a term of office. It was illegal to fire us. And I mean, to me, it's a slam dunk that the court will say, and they brought the case where they are employed, which is in Washington. And the Washington, D.C. Circuit has been very good about upholding the law. And so I think it'll be, a clear win. The real question, and sad to say, is that, of course, it will get appealed and eventually end up in the Supreme Court. And right now, how many people trust the Supreme Court? It's sad. Sure. Sonia Sotomayor just said, and I only heard the quote, I don't know where she was speaking, but she was talking about what you raised, Nayyera, which is, are they going to obey the courts, and that it's not optional? They have to obey the courts. And so I don't know. The court does not have an army to force them, but it does. It has the American public. And let's face it, more people voted against Donald Trump. I mean, it was, like 52% voted against him, 48 something voted for him. Why aren't all those people rising up? And frankly, why aren't half of the people who voted for him, who have seen the price of eggs either go up to $12 a dozen or to be unavailable? I mean, nowadays I'm seeing on my local neighborhood website, oh, I saw eggs at Woodman's, and that's at such as, literally because you can't find eggs in most grocery stores. Now that's mostly because I think of bird flu, which of course the government has stopped telling us about the spread of bird flu, and we know that it is spreading to other animals. And so not only to cows, but some dogs have been infected, and we need to know that.
We now have a human. Yeah.
Yep.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Well, it'd be helpful to have the scientists actually being allowed to do their jobs and then releasing the data so that everybody could collaborate. And that's, part of America's leadership has been this ability to lead on science because of this investment from the government with private research institutions. So that's just one example. And I hear this idea that, Trump was elected to do this and Trump was elected to do that. He was not elected to do a $40 million ad at the Super Bowl about why USAID needs to go away. That is not what taxpayers wanted to be done with their money. And I think that at the era that I was in State Department and working with USAID, the idea of $40 million spent on anything was a big deal, let alone advertising, when right now, all of the money that was spent on malaria vaccines, HIV, retroviral medicine, on food aid is just sitting in ports, not being allowed to be distributed throughout Africa, just sitting there, going to waste.
Rotting.
So this idea that they're saving us money somehow, that's amazing to me.
But I think the other half of that is that I don't think that people are realizing it's hurting American farmers, because they were the ones getting paid to raise those crops, and they sold the crops, and now they can't sell the crops because they aren't being bought by aid. So let's face it, it's hurting us. It's the same thing with, how do people not understand that the tariff is going to raise the price of your goods that you buy, and it's going to reduce the amount of goods that we sell abroad because they will retaliate, reciprocal tariffs. So if our products get too expensive, no one's going to buy them. So our manufacturing jobs are going to go down. And I don't understand how people don't understand that. I know that everyone listening to you right now understand that. But all the people who are listening to Fox News and OAN and Joe Rogan, they don't get it. They're getting a total lies. I don't know what else, let's call it what it is. They're lies. And they are being
They're getting
misled.
They're getting videos of brown people and migrants being shackled and sent overseas. That's what they're getting.
And plane loads of immigrants being turned away, being sent back or sent to Guantanamo, which to me, Guantanamo is,
I can't believe it,
synonymous with torture. And I know I'm not suggesting that they are going to be tortured, and I hope that's not true, but what lawyers are going to be there for them? Who is there? It's not like Miami lawyers are there. It's Cuba. So
and there is some evidence in question that perhaps people are, people could be rounded up who are not actually undocumented.
Of course.
They could be taken to, we had a case of that in here in New Jersey of a veteran man. And so they're taken to a detention center. And if you find yourself in Gitmo, without purpose, how long does it take you to get back home, to see a judge, to get it adjudicated? I mean, these are real challenges. I want to ask you a question about, so I'm going to play the conservative side for a second, because what the conservatives will say is that this wouldn't be the first time a president ignored a judicial order. So can you talk us through what happened with Andrew Jackson, I think in the 1830s, and then also I think there was a case with Abraham Lincoln around habeas corpus, where he ignored a judicial ruling during the Civil War. I think the Andrew Jackson case is the one that led to the Trail of Tears. It was about honoring Indian sovereignty. But there's some evidence that the conservatives point out that he would not be the first president to ignore a judicial ruling, judicial order.
Well, a judicial ruling is one thing. Hundreds of judicial rulings is another. And the blatancy of, this is apples and oranges. What Donald Trump and Elon Musk are doing is not comparable to anything. One, there is no national emergency. There is no invasion, although people listening to Fox and Joe Rogan probably think there is. But our job is to make facts available to people. And whether we can, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. And so how do we get people who are on the other side? How do we have conversations with Trump supporters? And it's really hard, because I can only have a conversation based on evidence, based on facts. I'm a trial lawyer. That's what I learned how to do, is to marshal evidence that someone would swear to in court, and that a jury would assess how credible is that witness? What are their weaknesses? What are their strengths? What's the other side's point of view? But when they have no facts on the other side, it's sort of like, I've had trials where the defense has put on liars, actual liars who could be charged with perjury. I had one case where I heard the jury say, "Oh my God, she caught him in a red-handed lie." And I knew from that moment there was no hope for the defense, that they, because I was able to argue in closing, well, if they lied about one thing, you can't believe anything else they said. And it's true. That's how it is. So it's the blatancy and the number of violations of our Constitution, the lack of due process, going back to the immigrants. People have a right to due process, and they are being denied due process. And I read, and I haven't done the kind of fact checking to make this a firm statement, that many of the people who have been rounded up, more than half have been let go because they were either American citizens or because there wasn't housing to round them up and keep them. So this photo opportunity of huge roundups and the stress on people who are undocumented is the game. It's not really happening. And yet people are living in fear. I'm sure there are many undocumented people. Children aren't going to school. People aren't going to work. They're not going to the grocery store. They're not going to church.
They're not going to church.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because now they are attacking churches and schools, which has always been off limits. Hospitals. I mean, people won't go. Who's going to report crimes against undocumented? No one, because if they reported, they could end up being deported. And I just don't think you can compare anything in our history to this. I would rather compare it to Richard Nixon, who said, okay, the rule of law is the rule of law. And I hope everyone will read the ABA's last two statements, which are so powerfully written about why we need the rule of law and why we cannot survive as a country if we become a rule of a man, if we aren't a country where laws are what matter. Who's going to pay their taxes? Not people who don't want to pay their what's going to happen? And if every American said, hey, if the president's going to use my money for this purpose, and this, one of the things that hasn't gotten a lot of attention is the sovereign wealth fund. Yeah. That has sort of escaped public attention. That Donald Trump.
Nayyera's all over this.
Oh, are you?
Nayyera's all over this.
Okay, so don't you think that's a really scary thing that he might do this?
Yes, and it's. I used to work at Treasury in the Obama administration, and there's all sorts. It's not only where the money is; it's jackpot because it's where all the data and information about how you track down people's bank accounts, everything that hits people literally in their pocketbook, not the theory, but actual pocketbook.
Yeah.
And the sovereign wealth fund idea of, first of all, who's investing in this sovereign wealth fund? What is the money going to be used for? Because it doesn't sound like it's going to be used for building bridges and ports or building schools. And then who are the trustees that decide? I can tell you where the money is going to come from. It's going to be taxpayer dollars rather than it be sitting in separate agencies where there's a budget process that you work with Congress. They want to take all of our taxpayer money and put it in a sovereign wealth fund where a couple of trustees decide what to do with it. Like that is literally in violation of Article 1, power of the purse that Congress has. But Congress has to care, right? They have to care about their own power to protect it.
And they don't seem to. Isn't that strange? Is that they are letting this happen because what's happening now is Congress passed laws that created certain departments, not DOJ, but legitimate departments like USAID, like the Treasury, like Labor, like the EEOC. And by withdrawing the staff and the funding for those through this non-existent DOJ, and I refuse to use the letters Department of Government Efficiency because it is not a department. It is a made-up thing. But they are totally ignoring the power of the purse, which is the most important power that Congress has. The House has to initiate they have passed these laws. They have appropriated money for these things. And under the Impoundment Act, the president can't just say, oh, I'm impounding the money. I'm not doing it. And it was, go back to Richard Nixon. It was because he was doing that Congress said, if it wasn't clear in the Constitution, which frankly I think it is, that we have this power and you don't, we're passing a law that makes it absolutely crystal clear that you cannot do this. And if they let him get away with this, they have ceded all power. They become irrelevant. as irrelevant as Donald Trump looked in the pictures in the Oval Office, yeah, he was at the Resolute desk, but the cameras were on someone else who did the talking. It wasn't Donald Trump. He just sort of sat there, didn't say much. Someone counted the number of words that Donald Trump spoke versus Elon Musk, and it was way more for Elon Musk. So it's incredible to me that Congress, even the Republicans in Congress would say, oh, I don't care if I have any power. Mm-hmm. Why be in Congress? Why are you there? What's the point? Just go away. You don't have to come. Why show up? Just stay at home. Stay in your own, meet with your constituents and see how they feel about you not representing their interests.
There are those who believe that Elon Musk is taking on the role of the national CEO, the CEO of the government, while Donald Trump is sort of the chairman of the board. Yeah. This is the split that they're working out. So we are moving into kind of this corporate government with this unelected CEO and really unvetted. I mean, those of us who've been through background checks, I think all of us have in our government service, you know the kind of onerous requirements there are to divulge these personal details about your life, which the American public knows none of this about Elon Musk. And I will tell you, you talk about Richard Nixon. There has been reporting in the past that one of the things that Donald Trump learned from his friend and former lawyer Roy Cohn was that Nixon gave up too easily. Mm-hmm. And that is how he approaches these questions.
Yes, it's true.
Nixon gave up.
It's actually one of my Watergate colleagues, Richard Benveniste, sent me a Borowitz report. Let me see if I can get it up fast enough to read to you. It's a letter from Nixon. Let's see, Benveniste.
Yeah, this is the thing that's so disturbing when you have someone who everybody in the country, Republican or Democrat, young or old, pretty much believes, look, Richard Nixon may have done some decent things, for a few years when he was president, but the guy broke the law, and we cannot have a criminal president. Although now, I guess we have a literal criminal president because he's
literal. Yes.
So here's what the letter says. Mr. Nixon offered the exclusive rights to publish his letter on one condition, that his expletives not be deleted, because as you know, in the tapes, his expletives were deleted. Dear Elon.
I kind of love that, actually.
Yeah. It was really terrifying to listen to the tapes, by the way, because I was raised to respect the presidency and whoever held that office. And when you listen to the tapes, you realize two things about Nixon. One, of course, was his language was obscene. His sexism and his racism were horrible. But he also wasn't the leader that everybody thought he was. He was manipulated by Haldeman and Ehrlichman unbelievably. But anyway, his letter, Dear Elon, one thing people don't realize about life down here is that Satan has CNN playing around the clock. It's his way of, I would say MSNBC, it's his way of ratcheting eternal torment up a notch. After a while, the spectacle of Wolf Blitzer claiming that something you've already heard 19 times is breaking news makes the white-hot flames incinerating your body seem like a spa treatment. So it should come as no surprise that I caught your Inauguration Day speech in all its fascistic glory. And let me say this, that was, I don't know if I can say this.
Say it.
Say it.
That was some fucked up shit.
There you go, Jill.
Did I say it?
Rip off
sorry.
Ooh,
yes, exactly.
And I just ended I cut it off. What did I do with it? Hold on.
That's a pretty decent place to leave it.
It goes on. I mean, everybody should look at it from the Borowitz report. Anyway, Richard Nixon has come back to life as a good guy. I mean, and remember, he's the one responsible for Title IX. He created the EPA. He opened China for trade, which, I mean, think of all the things that Trump has done. Oh, what has Trump done that's so good? I am having a real, I can't think of one thing. Can you?
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1, go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2, collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3, play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games, all for free?
Step 4, unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Inject bleach in case you get COVID. He told us.
Okay. Well, he may settle a peace in Ukraine by giving away half the country.
That's not peace. I'm sorry.
That's
that
not
is
peace,
not,
and that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. That's
not
that's
good
what they're
for
trying
us.
to tell people.
It's not good
that's
for
what they're
America.
trying to tell people.
If Putin gets land and takes over any part of Ukraine that he illegally invaded, what's going to stop him from invading Moldova and then invading NATO members?
Yeah.
I mean,
what stops Trump from making Canada the 51st state?
Or Gaza. So here's, it's not lost on me that perhaps this sovereign wealth fund idea was launched around the same time he talked about the U.S. taking over Gaza, which would be kind of against all international law. But how would we pay for it? How would we develop it? And maybe what he's trying to do is figure out, this is how I'm going to create this beachfront property that requires, moving 2 million people to countries that don't really want to have them. There's a lot here.
It is. I think you and Nayyera are both on target with what the dangers of this are. And I hope you can bring more attention to this possible creation of a sovereign wealth fund. It is, it's an incredible thing for a democracy to be talking about doing this and giving the power to just raise millions from taxpayers to be used however the president sees fit. And, the more he says about Gaza, the more horrendous it is, the more clear it is that it's a war crime, that it's a crime against humanity. People who lived in Gaza will not be allowed to return. Now, he can say all he wants. Well, they'll get better housing somewhere else. But so far, no country wants to take them. And even if it was, they want to return. And they have a right to return to whatever land. Yes, it is a mess. And it's
a mess.
It's Hamas's fault that it's a mess. Well, they have to kick out Hamas. That's what has to happen. He cannot get away with this business of, and no troops will be involved, and I will own it, or we will own it. Sometimes he says we, but mostly he says I'm going to take it, and it's there for the taking. That isn't how it works, and neither is Canada. And by the way, Panama, I was the general counsel of the Army when the Second Panama Canal Treaty was signed. And that is because we don't own the canal. We don't own any part of Panama. We built it in exchange for 100-year lease. And that expired. It's gone. It's over. There is a second treaty, which gave us certain rights, including priority for our naval ships. That's a very important and good thing, but it didn't give us the right to control it. And we are not being treated unfairly. He can say that all he wants, Donald Trump, but it isn't true. We pay the same as everyone else, except we also get certain special benefits like priority passage. So if anybody believes the nonsense he's saying about the Panama Canal, shame on you. And I have a bridge that I will sell you. The George Washington Bridge. I mean, really, I own it. I'm going to sell it.
Well, Jill, I think we could go on like this all day, and
we'll have to have you back.
Maybe we should. We'll have to have you back. I love the crossover episode, right? Like,
yes.
For both of our shows. This is really fantastic. Thanks for being here.
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.